we've got an actual caller calling in to present an argument for the existence of God based on art and consciousness. So, Chuck in Texas, how you doing? Thanks for calling.
I'm good. How are you doing, Matt? How are you doing, Eric?
Good.
I'm okay. You're gonna prove God from art and consciousness. I'm in.
So not exactly. So I do have a point here, but there's a little bit of a preamble. So if you guys can bear with me a little bit,
really,
I can.
Chuck, you're a theist, right?
Yes. Well,
right.
Deconstructing theist. Deconstructing theist. Let me put it that way.
Okay, so are you not calling in with an argument for the existence of God?
I am, but
why does there need to be a preamble?
So there does need to be a preamble because it's not really my argument. It is an argument that was made by a different theist on this show.
I don't care where the argument came from. I only care what the argument is. Is it a good argument for the existence of God?
That's the point. That's why I wanted to go with the preamble. I don't know, right? Because the theist called, right, and gave the argument. But I feel like because it was you and Arden that day, and I feel like you guys misunderstood his point. So I'm going to try and say in a way that I understood it and see if it is a good argument, if I can get you guys to understand it the way I understood it.
So the preamble is that somebody else made an argument and you think Arden and I misunderstood, and you're here to clarify it.
Right. And then since like that's the actual point, right? Then I would know, like, argue against it so I can know if it's a good point and things like, and we can all learn, right? So
I didn't need to know any of that, by the way. All of that poisons the well and already puts me in a headspace that is not as good for evaluating the argument. So what is the fucking argument, Chuck?
Okay. So this is the argument that he tried to get. God could be a creature or a being, right, that can create a world or multiple worlds that by default he cannot interact with, and they cannot interact with him or any of the other worlds. And yeah, that was his definition of God.
So I'm gonna read this back because I wrote it down, but I want to make sure that I got it exactly right because I tried to type it. God could be a creature or a being that can create a world or multiple worlds that he cannot interact with. Is that what you've got?
Right.
Okay. So we already have problems here when you say God could be, because we need to assert what God is, not what God could be. I don't know how you determined that God could be a creature or a being that can create a world or multiple worlds. I don't know how we got to any of that. But if we just say, this is what God is a creature that can create a world that he cannot interact with. Okay? If God can create a world and he can't interact with it, then the people in that world can't have any reason for believing that God exists, right?
Right.
Okay. So what that proposition is, it could be the case that there's an undetectable God.
Right.
And my answer to that is
God.
My answer to that is an undetectable God and a non-existent God are functionally identical from my perspective.
Okay.
You can maybe look at it this way too, Chuck. Chuck, to add on to what it matches.
There could be an escaped tiger in my backyard, or there might not be. But as it stands right now, if you were to say, Matt, is there an escaped tiger in your backyard? I would just say, not as far as I can tell.
And I want to coattail on what Matt just said there. Chuck, a God that cannot interact with this universe does not exist in this universe. And I'm only concerned about things that exist in this universe.
So I agree with that statement. And the reason why I added the art part in that is, so for example, if you consider, let's say Harry Potter, right? If you consider the Harry Potter world, right? J.K. Rowling doesn't exist in Harry Potter, right? So even if she were to, I don't know, fall in love with the Harry Potter character, she gets delusional when she falls in love with a character, nothing could ever come of that, like, feelings, right? Because she does not exist in that world by default, because she cannot interact with it unless she writes herself into the story, like Deadpool, for example, that can break the fourth wall.
No. If I write myself into the story, I'm not writing myself into a story. I'm writing a character version copy of something that I'm calling me, but it's not me.
Okay, true. But the characters, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. But what if the fourth wall, like breaking part? You know, like they can write it in a way where the characters are aware of God's existence. So I guess the full point I was trying to make is
those are still characters. Those aren't people who are actually aware. Saying Harry Potter is aware, Harry Potter was aware that Voldemort was creeping up on him, doesn't mean there's an actual person who's aware of that fact. It's just a story. It's not true just because a writer says so.
And you seem to be switching, and Chuck, you seem to be switching the roles of you're comparing J.K. Rowling writing Harry Potter to God creating us. And you're trying to analyze this from two different perspectives. In one case, you're analyzing from the God's perspective. In this case, is J.K. Rowling with her creation. And from the other one, you're trying to apply that back to the created, going back to the writer. And you're switching roles there. I don't even think this analogy even works at all, even on a fundamental level.
How?
Because the characters that J.K. Rowling puts into her book don't exist.
Okay, so that's the point that that this person was trying to make, and I sort of resonated with. We say it doesn't exist because we are in this plane, but there's stories in Harry Potter as well, right? There are books in Harry Potter as well, and those characters in Harry Potter, they will say those stories in those books don't exist either. So my point is,
no, those characters don't say anything. There is no Harry Potter. There is just Joanne.
I think that's a very surface level way of thinking of it. I think art, we create worlds, just like how God
we don't create worlds. I'm sorry, but if I write, here's the proof. I'm going to write a story right now. Joey loves this call. I just wrote that down. It exists. Did I create an actual world where an actual agent named Joey exists who loves this call?
I think so. Right?
Then you are delusional beyond measure. And I have no idea how we can possibly have a conversation if you can't tell the difference between a reality that we experience and a fiction that I made up right in front of you.
Yeah. Chuck, you're equivocating. You're equivocating create a world in two different senses. In the God sense, he literally created the world. Whereas in an author in a book sense, the author is figuratively creating a world, and you're equivocating those two together and going, whoa, what if we, are actually creating worlds? And in those worlds, our creations can create worlds. Like, no, you're equivocating the two straight off the bat.
I just wrote down in that same thing, Juwei is God, and he just killed all of the other gods that existed anywhere.
Rip.
And then killed himself. So now we are in a position where there is no God. It is true because Chuck said, I just invented a reality in which that's true. And my assertion is that my reality extends to all possible realities, because that's how powerful Jue is, or was, before Jue ceased to exist.
No, but if you remember, my initial point was they cannot interact with other worlds by default. They cannot interact with other worlds, just like the MCU cannot interact with DCEU.
No, it said that God. No, the definition was God could be a creature or being that can create a world or multiple worlds that he cannot interact with. The God I just invented
I added,
isn't it. Would you stop and wait? The God I just invented isn't interacting with worlds that he created. He's interacting with all the other worlds, including this one that you and I exist in.
And again,
so
the difference is, and Chuck, the difference is.
I'm sorry. Rewind to when I verified that I gave you the full and correct definition that you're now changing.
No.
However,
I verified.
However, it doesn't matter, because I just invented a God right in front of you, which you've acknowledged makes it real.
But it doesn't fit with my point. So you're not arguing against my point.
Yes, it doesn't fit with your point. You don't get to dismiss shit because it's fucking inconvenient.
It doesn't defeat my point if it doesn't.
It does defeat your point. I just invented a God right in front of you, and you told me it was real. You have been defeated. You are no longer in touch with reality. You have no connection to reality or truth at all. You have thrown it all away so that you can pretend that when I write a sentence, I have invented a reality with a real being that does real things. You have thrown out any hope of truth. You have thrown out any hope of truth. You have thrown out every tie to reality. How can you tell the difference? Reality? How can we're not having this conversation, Chuck, because you have removed yourself from all rational conversation. The second you acknowledge, I'm not here to answer your stupid fucking questions that you should have thought of beforehand. The issue here is that you just claimed that by writing a sentence, I created a reality with a God. After that, there's no point in talking to you, Chuck.
Okay, if you let me finish my last.
After that, there's no point in talking to you, Chuck.
Hey, Chuck, I just wrote down a little. Chuck, I just wrote down a little story here. In this story, there's another guy named Chuck, and he's exactly like you, but he is more rational than the Chuck in my worlds. Did I just create a more rational version of you somewhere?
This is the thing. I feel like you guys are
the yes or no question.
Misunderstanding my point.
No, it's a yes or no. It's a yes. So you think I actually just created another version of you that's more rational?
Let me do this.
Do you really think, Chuck? Do you really think that? Because I'm having a hard time here believing you.
Can I say this last thing, Eric?
Chuck, I just wrote another story. In this universe, Chuck is both a basketball and not a basketball. Do you believe that Chuck exists?
Do you?
I'm asking you the question, Chuck.
You can't.
It's not
Chuck
my
out.
world. You're the God of that
your
world.
answer.
It is.
The answer to your question is no. I don't believe it. Do you believe it?
Then you didn't create it. Right.
Okay, so you just changed your story now. So now in one story I did create it.
Liar. Now you're just
in one story I did create it.
There was no criteria before that we had to believe it for it to be real.
If you create something, if you create a story, right, and you don't believe the story that you're creating, then what are you creating?
Oh, look at you tap dancing and twisting and turning. You're not honest. You're not honest.
Man,
can I just do this one last thing? Eric.
No, you already said you were going to do the one last thing, and that failed
I
miserably.
didn't get a
You don't
chance
get to
do it.
keep
He
coming
kept
up with
asking me
new
questions.
last things to do. You don't keep coming up with
It-
ways to
I never
waste
did
my
it. He
fucking
kept
time.
asking me questions.
You're a liar. We gave you plenty of time to talk. We've asked you plenty of
The
questions.
last thing
You've already done a
yes,
last thing. You've already done a last thing
not.
twice. You don't get to do multiple last things.
You have been asking me questions. I haven't
You
said
don't get
any
to do
new
multiple
thing.
last things. Chuck, what part of it you're not worth talking to was unclear for you?
But if you guys actually want to understand
Chuck,
what
what
I'm
part
saying,
of you're not worth talking to was unclear for you?
if you guys actually want to understand what I'm saying, then
We
you
do
can. But
understand
if you
what you're
don't,
saying,
then
and
you
we
can't.
exposed
You can do what
exactly
you want
what
to
was
do,
wrong
Matt. It's
with what you're
not my
saying.
show.
We exposed exactly what was wrong with what you were saying, 100%.
Again,
And you don't
you're
like
not.
it, which is why you
And this is
tried
what
to dub it
happens.
as inconvenient. You're never going to win by talking over me. And at the end of the day, you advocated for something that is absolutely asinine because you advocated for something that throws out reality.
Am I muted?
You've never been muted. You just aren't relevant.
Oh, I thought I can talk. Okay. This is what, when I ask that question, what is reality, right? If we can agree that reality is things on our level, what the argument I'm arguing about creates multiple planes of reality that
It
we
doesn't
cannot
create
access.
anything.
You're positing it,
you
but
don't
you
think
can't show
stories.
it.
So you don't think like the MCU is like an actual universe. You don't think
Correct.
you can't.
Correct. I understand the difference between fiction
Equivocation.
and non-fucking fiction.
How can you tell
Yes.
if
Chuck,
we
Yes.
are
equivocation.
No. We're done, Chuck. We're done. You just
How
asked
can you
me
tell if we're
if I
fiction
thought
of
the.
a higher
Shut
being?
up, Chuck. Shut up, Chuck. You just asked me if I thought the MCU was real, and I said no. Do you think the MCU is real, Chuck?
I think it's fiction of us. Well, how can we tell
Do
if
you
we're
think
fiction
the
of a higher being?
MCU is real, Chuck? Yes or
It's
no?
a universe. Yes. Yes.
No,
it
it's
is
fucking
real.
not. It's fiction. I'm
Oh my
sorry that you have managed to waste all of our time with your inability to tell the difference between real and not real.
It
Your
is real. It has
understanding of
space. It has
reality,
time.
your understanding of reality is not real. Your
It has
understanding
space
of the
and
difference,
time.
but you're
What
never
else
going
do you need?
you're never going to get a word in edgewise. You should hang up because I'm either going to mute you and hang up, or I'm going to hang up before I mute you, because you don't have an understanding of reality, which means you don't get to play in my reality. You are not worth
Okay.
talking to in my reality because you put what happens in the MCU in the same category as what happens when a child dies from hunger. Fuck you.
No.
Yes. Hey, that was the end of the show.
Oh boy. I'm going to finish my story. And in this universe where Chuck was more rational than the Chuck in my universe, Chuck honestly reflected on the conversation and became better for it. Period. The end. There we go. At least one Chuck should have a happy ending. Yeah. Like the equivocations. The equivocations were funny because, you know, creating a universe or creating a world, he's equivocating literally doing that versus virtually doing that or figuratively doing that. And then he jumps to, again, the same exact thing, trying to equate the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the actual universe. And it's like, no, they have the same word, sure, but they mean two completely different things. And just because they share the same word doesn't mean they share the same attributes. This is the same like bottom of the barrel apologetics that I used to use back as a Jehovah's Witness, where I'm like, well, the universe is governed by laws. We have lots of laws in the United States that are made by lawgivers. Therefore, the natural laws have a lawgiver. Like, you're using the same word there, but you are switching out the definition as you argue. It's called the fallacy of equivocation. And I don't know, Chuck, if you're just doing like as Matt, you put it, I love this term, bong hit theology or bong hit philosophy. I care about what you can demonstrate. And if you really think this is the case, Chuck, show us. If not, don't try that again.
It's one of those things where we can't have the conversation. Either there's a God that exists as a detectable part of the reality that we inhabit. And by reality, just to answer the question, I'm convinced that there is a reality that Chuck and Eric and I all share, assuming Chuck is a person and not an AI. Assuming that Chuck is a living, breathing, flesh and blood person, or perhaps an AI that I'm not familiar with that I would also count as a person. I at least, when I'm talking about reality, Eric and I share a reality. I know because Eric's been over here at the house and we've shaken hands and we've watched an eclipse together and hung out and talked. So even if Eric isn't his real name, even if Eric is in fact an alien or a ghost or an angel, what I do know is that whatever Eric is, he inhabits a shared portion of my reality to the best of my ability to identify reality. And Harry Potter does not share my reality, and we know to be an invented fiction. The problem here is that when everything is viewed as just stories, then you can take this story from reality and this story from fiction, and how do you not put them on the same footing? Was President Bartlett from the West Wing our best president ever? Well, no, because that's not our reality. And in fact, it's not a reality at all. It is a fiction that emulates reality. It is not real. President Josiah Bartlett not only does not exist, but never said the things that the writers wrote for him to say. The words in those famous clips from the West Wing, those were not uttered by the characters. They were composed by the writers. And the same person who wrote the piece of dialogue for President Bartlett probably wrote the piece of dialogue for Josh Lyman when he responded to him. It's very likely that the same writer or writers wrote both parts of that conversation. And so the mind that is there in that fictional universe isn't any distinct mind. It is a character as viewed by this writer and this writer and this writer, which is why we have within the comic universe, not just the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in the comic universe, we have a number of different backstories, and we've retroactively gone back to try to reboot the various universes because somebody wanted to give this origin story and somebody else wanted to give that origin story. And in this version, Peter Parker is in love with Mary Jane. And in this version, he's in love with Gwen Stacy. And in this version, it's this. And so we go through all of those. And at no point is Peter Parker an extant entity thinking thoughts. We just finished watching the Disney Plus series, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which, by the way, the intro music is fucking banging. They took the old theme and updated it. It's called Neighbor Like Me, and it's by the Math Club, I think, something like that. But Neighbor Like Me, it's fucking ripping. But if you haven't seen it, it's like there's 10 episodes, and it's basically season 1 of a whole new Spider-Man cartoon on Disney Plus. And it's really good. It's got a really good feel to it. But that's not a reality as far as we can tell. And even if it were a reality, we would still not put it in the same category as the reality we experience. If we found, for example, that the multiverse, as it's depicted in the MCU, was actually a thing, and we're like in universe 942, and we can travel to 616. Okay, all of a sudden, those things become real, and those become realities. And then you have this delineation of you're in 492 and you're in 616 and you're in, 1023 or whatever. But that's when you say, those are different extant realities. But the time to believe that those realities are real and extant is when that's been demonstrated. Until then, they're just stories. And if I can write two completely different stories that are the same in every way, but I changed, for example, if I rewrote Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and rewrote it and changed Harry's name to Harvey, and everything else stays the same, do we now have two wizarding worlds that are both completely real with all the same story elements? And one of them, it's Harry Potter, and one of them, it's Harvey Potter. All because I just rewrote that. Oh, no, it doesn't count unless you actually believe it. Well, the proof against that is there are plenty of people who we recognize are delusional who believe in fictional scenarios. They believe that celebrity over there is their girlfriend or wants to be their girlfriend or boyfriend. They believe that this person is the character that they played in a movie. The mere fact, if something is written and is a fiction, what the caller was advocating for is that it becomes reality if someone believes it. Really? What can I do with it? So I made a reality real by virtue of believing it, but I can't interact with it in any detectable way. And it does me no good, and there's no way to test it. So we've now gone to a detestable, or an untestable from something that was potentially testable. I don't know.
Hey, come on, man. We gotta promote that clip we all just watched.
Well, I'd rather not shill.
Okay, well, Daddy has a $2,000 a month Red Oak habit, and I am your production god, and you will shill when I tell you to shill. Dance for me, baby.
Go, God damn it. Why did my life come to this? Go to patreon.com/call-the-line and donate. God damn it.
This is what happens when we let live chatters write our scripts.